From tiny, seemingly harmless ants to massive skin burn-inducing plants, invasive species can wreak havoc on the environment, animals, and humans when introduced into a new habitat. British Columbia is home to more plants and animals than any other province in Canada. Invasive species can affect wildlife habitat by reducing their food and shelter and altering water quality. They can increase soil erosion, introduce diseases, and injure and poison livestock, birds, and other living organisms. It is our responsibility to protect the wildlife that makes our province so extraordinary. Invasive species can also cause catastrophe for our lives. A small town in Oregon was burnt to the ground in 1914 and again in 1936, forcing residents to flee and laying waste to many homes and businesses. It all started when a plant from Ireland, known as gorse, was brought to town and planted as hedgerows. However, unknown to the citizens, gorse is very invasive and highly flammable. When a fire started, the gorse caused the flames to spread rapidly, decimating the town. This is just one of the many examples of how invasive species can impact you. Forest practitioners are important eyes on the ground, preventing, detecting, and reporting invasive species. Invasive species include not only plant life, but insects as well. Trees are susceptible to several diseases and insect pests. This can cost millions of dollars to control. The American chestnut trees are another victim of invasive species. Chestnut trees had wonderful wood for building purposes and fed millions of birds, animals, and people. There were 4 billion of them across the United States, but an invasive fungus killed them over a century ago. It was introduced by accident on a tree nursery stock from Japan and found by a forester in 1905, but within 40 years, most of them had been wiped out, and they are now an extinct species. Closer to home, white pine blister rust is a devastating forest disease. First imported from Europe in the 1900s on diseased seedlings, this rust fungus infects and kills white pine across North America, wiping out populations to such an extent that white pines are no longer considered a viable commercial species. Western white pine was a dominant species across inland and southern BC, making up 25 to 50% of forested communities. BC ran 2 large sawmills that cut only western white pine from 1920 onwards. These were shut down in 1960 due to lack of harvest. The tree has been almost completely removed from the forested landscape in western North America, with a resultant major change in biodiversity and major economic losses. It is critical that forest practitioners take action to prevent the spread of invasive species and to manage infestations. The estimated annual impact of invasive species across Canada is 30 billion, with 20 billion in the forest sector alone. Those are serious numbers. In this course, you will learn how you can help with the prevention and spread of invasive species in our forests. This course provides background on invasive species and their impacts, regional lists of invasive species in British Columbia, tools and best practices to be incorporated into your work, and actions you can take to report invasive species. By the end of this course, you will be able to describe the impact of invasive species and articulate why you should care. Define native species, non-native species, and invasive species. Identify the characteristics of invasives. Identify how to prevent the spread of invasives using the 8 best practices. And report invasive species using the Report Invasives app. Now let's get started with your learning.